So, on to lecture 4, the Passé Composé. We're starting to get a bit more technical now, and you can probably tell that by the fact that we don't have an English word for Passé Composé. I like to think of it as a simple past, but again, that's personal preference. So, the Passé Composé. What is it? Okay, so the Passé Composé is used to express an action in the past that had a finite ending. So it's an action that may have happened several times, but it was not an ongoing action. Something that happened and then ended. This includes singular activities in the past, so I ate this morning as an example, and activities repeated in the past so long as they were finite. So I ate twice this morning. You started to eat, you finished to eat, the action ended. And multiple activities in the past is the final one there. So this morning I ate, I showered, and then I went to school. All of those would take the Passé Composé because they all had an end point. What does it mean in English? So, again, make it a little bit easier on ourselves by finding out the English meanings as well. The Passé Composé covers 3 different meanings in English. So using the verb to play as an example, they are I played, I have played, and I did play. So all 3 of those English ways of saying things can be covered by the Passé Composé. And how is it formed? So, unlike the present tense, forming the Passé Composé requires the use of an auxiliary verb. So that's either avoir or etre. The general rule is that we use the auxiliary verb in its present tense, followed by the past participle of the main verb we want to conjugate. The past participle is what we're going to have a look at in the next couple of slides. After this one, agreements. So, to make things even more complicated, and that should be even more complicated, because it's complicated enough as it is, if the main verb uses the auxiliary verb etre, then the past participle has to agree with the subject. So by agree, we're going to have a little look that means we have to add an e or an s. So let's have a look. So in practice, this means that we have to add an e to the past participle if the subject is female, and an s if the subject is plural. So we have vous for you, talking about more than one person, and il, elle, representing they a group of males, or they a group of females. And this can be also combined, as we see there, if the subject is both of these things, so both female and plural. So we're talking about more than one. So in practice, avoir verbs. So for verbs that take avoir as the auxiliary verb, er verbs require that we remove the er and add an e, which is the e with the accent, pronounced e. For ir verbs, we remove the ir and add an I. And for re verbs, we remove the re and we add a u. So let's have a look at that in practice. Taking the example there on the verb regarder, let's go for that one, no particular reason. Our subject plus the auxiliary would be tu as. We're talking about you, one person, tu as. And then we take jouer, which is the verb we're going to work with, which is an er verb. And we'd remove the er, as we discussed there at the top, and we'd add the e with the accent. So you become tu as joué. No need for an s because we're talking about one person. A bit further now, we have finir, and we'd go with nous avons. So we're going to go we have, nous, we, avons, have, fini. So our past participle there, we've taken off the ir, and we've replaced that with an I. So nous avons is our subject plus the auxiliary, and then the fini is our past participle. Okay, in practice for etre verbs, so verbs that take etre, these er verbs, we remove the er and we add the e. Again, it's a fairly simple rule. For the ir verbs, we remove the ir and add an I, and re verbs, remove the re and add a u. So, as you can see, that's pretty much the same as the avoir verbs. However, in green there we have don't forget the agreements. Our verbs that take etre are the ones that are going to need the extra e or the s, or of course, both. So if we take our example verb, let's go for the second one down there, monter. We take our subject and the auxiliary verb in the present tense, which is tu es. We're going to use tu for this one. And we're going to use the past participle there, monter. So that's the e accent replacing the er, the a sound. And the in brackets there, the extra e, would be if we were talking about a female. Let's go a little bit further down to a bit more complicated one there. And we'll go with the verb descendre. There we go with vous êtes. So you are. This is the subject plus the auxiliary. And the past participle there, we have descendu. Absolutely fine there. and then we'd have the choice of the E if it was talking about a lady, because vous of course can be used for a singular person as well, as a very, very formal way of saying it, and an S if we are talking about plural. Of course, it might need both. If we're talking about you are talking to a group of girls, then we would use the E and the S. So how do we form avoir and etre? For saying I have had or I have been, which takes either avoir or etre, we'd use avoir as the auxiliary verb for both. So that's nice and simple, easy to remember. So for example, down here in avoir, the subject plus the auxiliary for the top one, j'ai. Okay, we know that already, we did that in the present tense. J'ai, I have. And then we need the avoir in the past participle. So the past participle of avoir will be the same for all of these, and that is eu. So, putting it together, we'd have j'ai eu, I have had. Across the board there, on the etre, we would use, again, we'll take j'ai again, just for ease. And etre in the past participle is the été. So the E sound on both sides of the T there, we have été. So j'ai été would be I have been. Okay, so for both of these verbs, don't forget, we take avoir as the auxiliary verb, and then we use the ending, which stays the same for all of the different subjects, so whether it's I, you, he, she, we, you, or they. Nice and simple to remember, but very, very important also. Okay, that's the end of that lecture. It's been a little bit more wordy, I do apologise for that, but more to come in the next lecture. I'll see you there. Bye bye.